and someone that, those of you who've been around, how many of you have been in the Libertarian Party for over 10 years? Could you raise your hands? I'll look around the room. A lot of us are what I call Libertarian Classic. We're not the newbies, okay. And a lot of us know our next speaker. She's simply an extraordinary person. I could spend an hour singing her praises, but I usually sing out of tune. And that wouldn't be good. Our speaker this evening is Sharon Harris, President of Advocates for Self-Government. Sharon became President of the Advocates in 1995, 4 years before I came on board as a columnist. And I've had the honor of working with her and her husband and the terrific team with Advocates. She's just a joy to work with. I know this is ruining your reputation. You can live with it. You can live with it. But it's more than a duty, it's a pleasure to work with Sharon Harris and Jimmy and the terrific team that the Advocates Board and the Advocates team has put together. We have a little bit of excellent good news with Sharon. Not only is she coming upon her 20th anniversary as the president in 2015, but in addition to that, she's also co-founder of the Libertarian Party of Georgia. She was there in the beginning when we needed her. She's been there all along. She's not a fair weather libertarian. Fair or foul, snowy or sunny, Sharon Harris has consistently been there. This summer, this June, Sharon Harris's first book is going to be published. It's entitled to How to Be a Super Communicator for Liberty. So for those of you who are looking for a terrific book from a great, great communicator, you're going to be in for a surprise at the Libertarian National Convention. You thought you were just going there to vote on new chairs or new members of the Libertarian National Committee, to meet libertarians you've heard about, to see old allies and cronies. But no, you're going to get a chance to get a first edition copy of How to Be a Super Libertarian Communicator. And knowing Sharon and her work, whether she's talking at Harvard and teaching libertarians there how to communicate, whether she's at the University of Texas, whether she's up in Oklahoma or over in Wyoming, she's consistently training new libertarians on how to present these ideas in ways that make them want to join us, that appeal to them, that show them the blessings and benefits of liberty. That's the kind of teaching that Sharon brings to our new libertarians. She turns them into communicators instead of people who excommunicate people from a movement. She turns people away from heated arguments and into warm conversations for liberty. Tonight, Ms. Harris is speaking on a terrific subject. How many of you have seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life? Tonight, Ms. Harris has an interesting speech modeled on It's a Wonderful Life, but applied quite a bit differently in a way that I think you're going to be charmed by. Ms. Harris is going to speak on It's a Wonderful Liberty. Please join me and welcome our libertarian.
Thank you, Michael. You can just keep going. He's already asked you how many people have seen the movie, It's a Wonderful Life. How many of you were moved or had a special feeling about that movie? You all had a really good feeling about that movie. Great. And how many people here hated that movie? Anybody here hated the movie? Okay, good. That's good. Because I usually have one or two people. Because there are some things in that movie that some libertarians have a problem with, okay? So if you did have a little bit of a problem with some of the things in the movie, bear with me because I'm gonna show you how that movie actually does have a meaning for us here. You may be surprised to discover that It's a Wonderful Life has a great message for the future of liberty. Let me set the stage. It's Christmas Eve, 1946 in Bedford Falls. And George Bailey, wonderfully played by the great Jimmy Stewart, you recall, is standing on a bridge, looking down at an icy river, thinking about him. Because you see, George Bailey has a life insurance policy, $15,000 worth of life insurance policy. And he has persuaded himself that he is worth more dead than alive. Unbeknownst to him, in heaven, there are two angels looking over George Bailey's life. And accompanying them is an angel in training named Clarence. And they are reviewing things that have happened throughout George Bailey's life. And just a couple of examples, they noticed that at age 12, his brother Harry fell into icy waters in the river. And George Bailey jumped in and saved him. And when he saved him, he lost the hearing in one of his ears from the cold water. But he nonetheless saved his brother. Years later, George was working in a pharmacy. And the pharmacist at the time was just distraught over the loss of his son. He wasn't paying attention to what he was doing. And he accidentally filled a prescription with poison. George noticed it, pointed it out to him, and corrected it before he gave the prescription to the person who came to pick it up. Again and again, all the way through the movie, you see that the angels are watching George Bailey's life. And what he did was help others throughout his life. He instinctively followed his principle of doing the right thing as he saw it. World War II breaks out, and George Bailey can't enlist because he lost the hearing in one of his ears. But his brother Harry enlisted, and his brother Harry became a Navy fighter pilot. And during that time, in one aerial dogfight, he shot down 2 planes that were just about to destroy a ship full of American troops. Now, throughout the story, a lot of calamities happen and everything. And during that time in our story, George Bailey decides that he really has not contributed anything to the world. He's depressed, he's despondent. He ends up just getting mad, leaving his house, going to a bar, getting drunk, running his car into a tree. And then he gradually walks over to the bridge, is standing on the bridge, thinking very seriously and trying to get up the nerve to kill himself. Now, before George Bailey can do that, along comes Clarence, our angel in training. And Clarence jumps into the river and pretends to be drowned. Well, what do you think George Bailey does? True to form, he jumps in to save Clarence. And that's when Clarence tells him, I'm really a guardian angel here to help you. Now, of course, George Bailey does not believe him, okay? And in fact, George shares with him that not only does he want to die, he wishes that he had never been killed. That's when Clarence shows George what would happen. His life in a small town would have happened if George Bailey had lived. The pharmacist went to prison for poisoning a child, and he died of broken hand. His brother Harry is dead, so he didn't become a fighter pilot, and so consequently not only did he die, but hundreds of U.S. soldiers died because he didn't protect them. Story after story Clarence shares with him, and finally George Bailey realizes, sees clearly that he actually made a difference for good in his life and in the life of his small town. He chooses life, he goes back home, there's a joyful celebration, and then and his little girl says, Daddy, that means an angel got his wings. And sure enough, Clarence has won his wings, and now he's a full-fledged. Here's a full-fledged. So George Bailey realizes it's a wonderful life. I think this movie holds a deep meaning about life and about the Libertarian movement in general. The movie demonstrates that small things can have big results. Unnoticed things can have very noticeable effects. Forgotten events can have unforgettable consequences. It's very true for life, and it's very true of liberty and modern age. And that's that's why I say it's a wonderful liberty. Let's look at some George Bailey's of the Libertarian movement. Let's think back of some of the great people in the movement, in the early movement that helped it grow. Let's first look at Ayn Rand, for example. She's the one that kind of launched the modern libertarian movement with her novels, The Fountainhead and Thomas Rome. And these novels did more than just entertain their readers, more than just made them feel a certain thing. It actually opened their eyes and got them thinking totally differently. As Oliver Wendell Holmes once wrote, man's mind, when stretched by a new idea, never returns to its original privileges. That's what Alice wrote in Fountainhead did. And not only that, what's interesting is, not only did it do that for lots of her readers, but it dramatically influenced lots of founding fathers and mothers of this movement that we are a part of right now. David F. Nolan, Harry Brown, Ed Crane, Robert Poole, and thousands of other libertarians say that Ayn Rand was their primary influence to bring them into the libertarian movement. Her work gave birth to the George Baileys of the early libertarian movement and the Libertarian Party. What if Ayn Rand had never been living? What if she had never written that story? What kind of movement would we have? Would we even have a libertarian movement now? How different would it be? Clearly, Ayn Rand was a wonderful wife and a wonderful liberty. Let's consider Robert Poole, Nanny Klausner, and T. Borden Cannon. These were three people who were around. They bought a tiny mimeographed freedom newsletter and turned it into Reason magazine. In the early 1970s, Reason was the magazine that was the glue that held together the fledgling libertarian movement. It published Robert Poole's case for privatization, deregulating of airlines, all of these great thoughts and great policy ideas. But it also published and promoted libertarian ideas and insights on lots of topics, and it also covered the beginning of the Libertarian Party. It covered the campaign of John Hospers and Tony Nathan, someone that the movement will really miss as of a couple of weeks ago. She was a true pioneer. It covered her campaign. Robert Poole and Reason published Dr. John Hosper's book, Libertarianism, which also led to more libertarians coming into the movement. What if Reason had not been there? What if Reason had decided, oh, Libertarian Party, that's a really bad idea, we're not even going to cover anything about it? What would the libertarian movement be like without Reason magazine at the beginning? Because of Robert Poole and Reason, it's a wonderful movement. How about David F. Nolan, co-founder of the Libertarian Party? He was a volunteer in the Barry Goldwater campaign in 1964. In fact, he was an activist in the Republican Party. And then, on that fateful day, and many of you may remember this, August 15, 1971, Richard Nixon imposed wage price controls in the economy. Now, many Republicans praised Nixon, and many Republicans just kind of remained silent. But to David Nolan, this was the straw that broke the camel's back. The final insult to liberty. He had had it. That same month, what he did was he published an article entitled "The Case for a Libertarian Party." For 4 months, he called and wrote to people and other libertarians and invited them to join him. He founded a Libertarian Party. And on December the 11th, 1971, these libertarians met in Dave Nolan's living room, and the rest is history, right? He founded the Libertarian Party. And the Libertarian Party has exposed tens of millions of libertarians for over 40 years. It's recruited, educated, and activated thousands of libertarians. And I believe, in my opinion, the Libertarian Party is the most effective party in the last half century. because of introducing all these wonderful ideas into our society. Now let's ask the George Bailey question about David Nolan. What if David Nolan had just shrugged his shoulders and said, oh well, I guess that's what we're going to do? Or what if he had gotten so mad he decided he didn't want to be involved in politics ever again and just walked away from it and never founded the Libertarian Party? What if he had never done that? Where would we be today? We might have a Libertarian Party, but it probably wouldn't be what it is today. It probably wouldn't be as strong because it would have been much later since it was founded. Yes, because of David Nolan, it's a wonderful place. I want to talk about one other person, and that was Marshall Fritz. How many people here ever had the opportunity to meet Marshall Fritz? Cool, a lot of you. Great. Well, Marshall Fritz was active in the Libertarian Party. In fact, he was the executive director of the California Libertarian Party. And he decided to found the Advocates for Self-Government in 1985. And he began sharing with libertarians ways to more effectively, better, and successfully communicate their ideas to libertarians. He then rediscovered the Nolan path that David Nolan had designed, and he loved the fact that it included libertarians on the political spectrum. But then he thought, well, how can people discover where they are on this new political path? And one night in the middle of the night, he came up with the world's smallest political quiz. The now world famous world's smallest political quiz. It's been taken 21 million times online. Millions of copies of the card have been distributed. College students now are using them. We have sent out stacks of quizzes along with our OPH kit to over 1,000 libertarian college groups who are using them to grow their groups on campus. Now, why is the quiz so powerful? Well, remember what Oliver Wendell Holmes said, that man's mind, once stretched by a new idea, never goes back to its original. This is one of those new ideas. Ask the George Bailey question about Marshall Fritz. What if he had never found the Advocates? What if he hadn't invented the world's smallest political quiz? This magical, magnificent, magical tool has become the single most powerful thing for discovering and creating libertarian. And Marshall Fritz did that. Thanks to Marshall Fritz, it's a wonderful liberty. Now, there are many George Bailey stories throughout the movement about the founding of Cato, about Harry Brown, about Earl Howell, Jim Lawrence, many more libertarians you know of. And I will wager that there are a few of you who could tell George Bailey stories about people in the Libertarian Party of Maryland. I'm looking at a mighty one here. And many more that I've met here today. And many of us have George Bailey moments, or we've created George Bailey effects. When you drop a stone in the pond, the ripples flow. And sometimes in our lives we create unexpected ripples. Now these stories that I've shared with you so far have been about big things, really big things that have happened. And you may be thinking to yourself, I can never do those kind of big things. I'm too shy, or I'm not creative enough, or I don't have enough time to contribute to the movement, to do something big like this. But let me tell you, that just by being here right now, you are George Bailey for liberty. Just the things that you're doing for the Libertarian Party of Maryland, you are George Bailey for liberty. Sometimes we're George Bailey, and sometimes we're Clarence the Angel. Clarence the Angel is the one who reveals to other people what a difference they make in people's lives. So today, let me be your Clarence. I think I have a halo of but I'm going to be Clarence tonight. Do you ever get frustrated or a little just bridge into the icy river below. Well, let's see, it's spring now, maybe the ice is over. I thought, I hope, but, seriously, we just kill a little bit of ourselves every time
Need some help with that.
we decide not to do something.
Still got quite a few to do, don't
Because
you?
we think it's not going to make a difference. Every time we just think, oh, what I feel doesn't matter anyway, so I'm not going to proceed with what I had thought I might do. So let me be your friend. How many of you here have ever had a letter to the editor published about libertarianism? Look at this. Did you know that you reached hundreds, thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people with your letter to the editor? You don't know who you reached, but you reached a lot of people. How many people have ever run for office? Or are now running for office? Look at this. Look what you've done. How many people have helped with a campaign? You didn't run, but you helped with a campaign. Look at this. Okay. You may be too shy to run for office, but somebody who's running for office needs a website. You may, there's a letter to the editor that needs to be written. There's someone that needs to greet people when they come to a meeting. There are all kinds of jobs in this movement, and every job that you do makes you feel different in the world. My organization, the Advocates for Self-Government, has tons of tips and techniques that you can use to become even more effective and successful communicators of ideas. Just use one of them. If you just use one of them, you could bring about the next Harry Brown, the next David Miller into the movement for liberty. Seemingly small things, but small things produce big results. Unnoticed things can produce very noticeable effects. And forgotten events can create unforgettable. If you ever doubt that there's value in what you do for liberty, remember that you can be causing the George Bailey effect. You have made a difference for good in the world. If you see another libertarian going through a time when they think everything I've done just has not worked, I haven't done anything, then you can be their Clarence. You get to be an angel. So you can tell them and point out to them how important their work is for the liberty movement. And just how important is this anyway? I mean, we're doing these things for liberty. So what? So what difference does it make? Well, it just so happens that we are involved in the great cause that makes all other great causes possible. And that may sound like a really big claim, but think about it. Think about the history of the world and all the great things that have happened, and all the great causes that have happened, have been from human liberty, from individual liberty. If you look around the world and you see where liberty is lacking, what do you see? You see poverty, sickness, violence, tyranny, misery. But where there is liberty, what you see is abundance, harmony, happiness. In fact, human liberty is what makes it possible for people to have innovation, technology, art, all of those things that rise us above and make life better for everyone. The gift of having everyone be able to make their dreams true, to at least pursue their dreams. George Bailey learned that, to his great surprise, that he had made a great significant contribution to his cause. But as libertarians, our George Baileys, each and every one of you in this room, that actions, big and small, are changing not just small towns, but the entire world. Libertarians are indeed involved in the great cause that makes all other great causes possible. In fact, I believe that we are the current anti-slavery movement. And how important is that? That tiny bell that George Bailey heard represented an angel. But the bell that we hear as libertarians is the Liberty Bell. And
Sharon Harris is going to answer your questions if you have any George Bailey questions. And if she will allow me a little later, I'll tell you the reason Harry Brown did not drop out of the first presidential campaign and did not quit. He had a George Bailey moment. But that'll come in a moment. First, we want a word from our sponsor. Bob, could you bring them these envelopes and hand them out so that we can have an opportunity to continue supporting the Libertarian Party of Maryland? As you may or may not know, I came here unpaid. I'm a volunteer, just like you are. Nobody gave me a nickel other than for my books. And God wants me to have the money. He told me personally. We have an opportunity here to help a party that I see is beginning to thrive. I mean, I was so pleased when I saw that Arvin had won this award, that you had honored him and recognized the contributions he had made. But I think we're going to see other contributions from the mighty Quinn, or Leo, or our other candidates. We're going to see us reaching out to new libertarians. Now, what I'd like you to do, can I have one of these, please? Is reach in here and ask yourself, could I help the Libertarian Party of Maryland to move forward and continue doing some of the work? And if you would like to do this, here's your benefit. You've seen this weekend recognition of merit. We don't hand out prizes to people because they're our pals. We're pals because we prize the merit that you bring, and you bring, and you bring, and you bring, and you bring to the party. We honor excellence. People that put in their time and put in their effort and produce results and reach out to new libertarians. There was a book written in the 70s called It Usually Begins with Ayn Rand. And the book argued that that was where most people found the libertarian idea. You know, Maud remembers, we were all laughing about this. And it was written by Jerome Ticheli, and people would read Ayn Rand and go, my God, we've got to be free. I've got to grab people by the lapels and annoy them into being libertarians just like me. And Ayn Rand had that kind of high amphetamine, high aggression effect on many of us. Until we met Rothbard. Then we got a turbocharged. Now we're going to get really rough and turn these people into non-aggressors. Ayn Rand was the point of contact for most people in the 70s. Do you know who most people hear about libertarianism from today? Libertarian Party candidates. You and our other candidates all across the country. I had somebody say, well, you don't realize the kind of great work that libertarian think tanks are doing. I was in Walmart the other day, slumming, you know, and I heard a woman 2 rows over saying, I don't know what I think about free immigration. I can hardly wait to read the Cato white paper. You don't believe that?
I don't.
Because she's never heard the word Cato in her life other than Cato Kalin. Or maybe Bruce Lee back when he was the sidekick of the Green Hornet. These people don't go to think tanks. A small number of people have even heard of Cato white papers, have seen the speakers, but they've seen our candidates. Whether it's Sarvis, whether it's Johnson, whether it's Howell, whether it's you, whether you're a volunteer on the campaign, or whether you're the front man or woman, where you're out there walking the walk, talking the talk, and selling people on the ideas. You are the first libertarian they ever met. You are the first contact that they've had. You're the reason that they looked at Google the word libertarian and said, whoa, wicked cool. What else you got? And found out all about us because of you. Because they saw the word libertarian on the ballot next to your name. Because they heard you say something and said, that really makes sense. Because they said, golly, why isn't everybody a libertarian? And it happens because of our candidates and our party here in Maryland. I'm going to ask you to join me and support the Libertarian Party in Maryland. I'm unpaid and I'm donating tonight. If you can afford $10,000, give me your home number. I need to know you. Most of us are on budgets. So maybe you're thinking, could I do $500 or $1,000 or maybe $250 to the Libertarian Party of Maryland? If you want to go monthly, you can put $20 a month. That'll come out to $240 a year. We could do that. We'll do monthly. But the key here is the party is here to keep you available on the ballot. Our party is here to give you the structure and the volunteers and the mailing list for us to find volunteers for your campaigns. Would you reach down now, take out your pen, fill it out, put your name on your card. If you don't have your card, it's okay. You can put money in here. We will take cash. I know I shouldn't do it. I know the Lord will look askance upon me, but we will take cash for the Libertarian Party of Maryland, and all of it will go to advance the cause of liberty in the state here, to promote the ideas, to make sure you're on the ballot, and to make sure we have an opportunity to make it a wonderful liberty. As you fill this out, Sharon Harris is going to answer some questions. I want you to hold it over your head, and I will pick it up. And we'll be doing some counting. But I want to put in, I must be out of my mind, $60. I can't afford this. I can't afford $60. I had some money frozen by the Department of Homeland Security. And you know what? Overseas work. Can you believe this shit? I want to support the Libertarian Party of Maryland. I want you to join me. If you can afford $250 or $500, God bless you. If that's too much, we like hundreds, 150, 95, 94. If that's too much, 500, 600. I went to public schools. I can't count. But if you, yeah, it's a poor concept. I should have been schooled by Arvin, then I could add and subtract. But if you'll do that and put it in here, every dime, there's no commission on this. This doesn't go to anybody. It stays 100% in the state of Maryland. I want to be one of the first donors. Can I have a second or third donor while Sharon begins? Thank you. Thank you so much. God bless you. And when you get an atheist to say God bless you, you know that you're in for dyslexia spiritually. And if you don't have a lot of money, look, I know some people are on fixed budgets. Put in a 5 or 4 1s or 9 3s if you got your money in Baltimore. That's an old joke. I don't want to go there. George Carlin, you know, in New York it's 3 o'clock. In Chicago it's 2 o'clock. In Baltimore it's 3:51. But if you got it, we'll do this. And Sharon, if you have questions for It's a Wonderful Liberty or the George Bailey Effect, raise your hand and ask Sharon, because we have had some libertarians have these effects. And some of them aren't famous people. These aren't people where you go, oh, that was the founder of the party. It was someone unknown. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Who would you consider to be, in the libertarian circles, who accomplished the most things in this way?
A lightly known person who's accomplished a lot.
I can't think of anybody right now. I mean, I can think of a lot of people, but I don't know if I want to say, I'd like to hear some other people's ideas. I can't really think of someone that I would want to.
Alicia Garcia Clark.
Well, yeah.
Ed Clark's wife. Ed would not have run for president and governor had his wife not fully supported him going full-time, getting the party on the ballot, 545,000 votes for governor in 1978, and then they both agreed that he would run for president, 923,000 votes, the highest until Gary Johnson. Alicia Clark is the reason that Ed had the confidence that we can do this together, the support of his loving partner.
That's a good one.
Thank you.
Anybody else have somebody to fill in? Somebody you know?
Oh, got one back there.
No, Sharon, I guess part of the story about It's a Wonderful Life, you have to envision that something good, I guess, can come because of the change you want to incorporate. And so when you talk to people about, you know, hey, libertarians will do X, Y, Z, and so many times I also get, you know, I mean, I'll consider wasted vote syndrome. Even if you get in, there's nothing you people can do. I think so, you know, they can't imagine anything good coming, even if you had libertarians, I mean, how do you address people that something will occur, like, your brother didn't die or did die, these events wouldn't have happened, We really proved that we would cut taxes, spending, et cetera.
Right, I think the main thing, one thing is to do some of the work that Carla Howell was doing about who's driving. The idea of talking about benefits. I mean, that's one of the primary things that can allow people to visualize what we're talking about, because we need to give them specific examples. It turns out that really the majority of people, like 75% of people, prefer concrete examples over abstract principles. And that's one of the problems we run into as libertarians. We like to talk about abstract concepts and the free market and how great it is and everything. And people can't visualize that, but when we give them a good example of how it works, they can see that and they have that aha moment. And so I think we need to talk to them not only about the benefits, but the benefits to them, to that person you're talking to always use the you instead of I. Just as an example, if you're talking to somebody and you could easily say, I just don't think it's right that I have to take property taxes because I don't even have any children in the government school. You could say that and that would be true, but it's much more effective to say something like, I notice that you don't have any children in the local schools right now, and I don't think you should have to pay property taxes for the school. And that person can picture that benefit to them and how much it would save them. Talking about, like Carla Howell did many times, talking about the income tax, how much money it would be in your pocket if we ended the income tax. Things like that. And you can't necessarily, if you've never been in office before, you can't give examples of how you cut government before or something like that. But you can certainly give examples of libertarians and what our vision is and what we believe in. So I think that's the important thing, is to give them those examples and the benefits, how it benefits them. Dr. Locke.
First of all, Ms. Harris, thank you for a very nice presentation this evening. I think that in many cases, libertarians underestimate the importance of their contributions because they don't realize the extent to which, in many cases, people who feel they disagree with us, they're basically disagreeing with a very bad caricature. And if we libertarians, by virtue of treating people with courtesy and respect, listening to what they have to say, and sharing with them a beautiful vision, we may be moving the ball a very long way down the field simply by clarifying, removing the misconceptions. And we, in many cases, I think we have libertarian disposition precisely because the message is a truly beautiful message. We want to share it. We expect people to become whole hog libertarians, to embrace the whole thing. And sometimes we're disappointed when they don't immediately do so. However, you may have enormous benefit to the liberty movement by simply showing people a good face, that you're a decent person, you're a nice person, you take them seriously. You can do enormous good one person at a time.
Right, that you treat them respectfully, you practice the golden rule, you treat them the way you would like to be treated, you don't criticize the other person. Actually, I believe that every human being deserves to be treated with respect. You may not respect their ideas, but you respect them as a person, and you are civil. And interestingly, then we stand out, because look at how the other guys do it. They scream and holler and call people stupid and everything, and we are the civil people who are good people, and that's who we are.
But to be fair, the people they're calling stupid, the liberals are calling conservatives stupid, and we can agree on that. And the conservatives are calling the liberals stupid, and I think we can get behind that and say, we think you're both right. Because libertarians understand the golden rule. By the way, Carla Howell told me that the Republicans and Democrats have already ripped off who's driving. The Republicans are doing who's hit and run driving, and the Democrats are doing who's drunk driving. And so we may want to worry about this. And I think everybody has got in their donation.
You know what they say in Massachusetts?
What's that?
We'll drive off that bridge when we come to it.
What, do you remember National Lampoon when they did the picture of the Volkswagen floating? And said if Ted Kennedy had been driving a beetle bug, he'd be president? I thought that was wicked funny.
I don't think I should have that.
I think we've got all the donations that people have given in. Before, we'll have room for one more question, but I wanted to share a George Bailey moment that I talked with Sharon about some time ago, and I've talked with Carl about it because it affects our current Libertarian Party. How many of you were proud of and pleased by and honored by the kind of presidential campaign that Harry Brown ran for president? Did you like what you saw? Did he bring the kind of honor you wanted to see? Here's what happened. At the time that he was seeking the presidential nomination, there weren't any real strong candidates for the Libertarian nomination. Harry had seen the debate between Dick Body and Andre Maru at the last Libertarian National Convention, and as they were answering the question, like a lot of us, he talked back to the TV and gave his answer. And his wife Pamela said, "Harry, you should be president. Not you should run for president. You gotta know Pamela to know. She doesn't like wasting time." And Harry Brown, who had been opposed to even voting, had been opposed to political activism, over a number of months, talked it over with a number of friends, including his wife, and thought, I think I want to run. I think I can help grow the Libertarian Party. I want you to realize, at the time, the Libertarian Party had 10,000 dues-paying members. And the consequence of the Brown campaigns, 5 years, and the Archimedes team was 35,000 Libertarians in the party. That was the consequence. And a lot of people got brought in. But here's what happened. Harry Brown called up Andrea Mellon Rich and said, "Andrea, I've been thinking about running for the Libertarian nomination for president. Who should I be in touch with?" And she said, "Oh, Lord, Harry, don't run for the Libertarians. They'll break your heart." "What do you mean?" said Harry. "Well, you run and they like you at first, and then they tear you down. There are people that don't like you, and they'll say nasty things about you and your wife and your friends and your coworkers. You shouldn't do it, Harry." And she spent about 20 to 30 minutes trying to talk Harry Brown out of running for president. And he says, "Well, okay, but if I were to talk to a couple people, could you recommend who I talk to?" And she gave him the name John Hicks, who had run the floor campaigns at the convention for Ed Clark and Roger Lee McBride, our 1976 candidate for president. And Harry and Pamela went out to Fresno, California, or as we call it, scenic Fresno, the world's biggest truck stop. If you've never been there, you know why Marshall spent his time on the road rather than home. And they spent the weekend with John Hicks, who was a cotton broker. And John spent the whole weekend telling Harry how awful it was being a Libertarian candidate. You get ignored, you get dismissed, you get put down, you get excluded from debates, all the stuff you hear sometimes when you go, "I'm going to run for president." Why would you let yourself be abused by running for office? And they told him all the bad stuff. A whole weekend. Harry and Pamela going back, and I think they were getting speed dial suicide hotline at the point. He asked John, said, "Well, who should I talk to?" He said, I really think I could do it. And John was trying to talk him out of it. John says, "Well, there's two people to talk to. Talk to Emil Franzi in Tucson, Arizona, who had worked with the David Bergland campaign and was my early political mentor, and said, and talk to Michael Cloud." And he said, "Be sure to talk to Cloud last." And you got to know me and Hicks to know why I'm always last. He goes and talks to Franzi, and Franzi thinks that Hicks hasn't been nearly dramatic or cruel enough, rubs salt in the wound and says, "No, it's going to be much worse than Hicks said. You're going to be disgraced. All your friends are going to let you down. They're not going to donate money." So I want you to realize, here's a guy who wants to be our candidate, wants to build the Libertarian movement, wants to help us advance the cause of liberty. And everybody he's been sent to help him persists in trying to drown the man who taught them to swim. And after he talked to Franzi, he talked to Pamela. He told me this story later. And he said, "Maybe I'm tilting at windmills. should I call Michael? And Franzi says, oh yeah. And so I get a call from Harry Brown. Now, Harry Brown I had known as anti-voting, anti-party, anti-political action, sort of a political pacifist. And he said, hi, this is Harry Brown, and I want to run for the Libertarian nomination for president. And I started laughing. I wasn't laughing at him. I was laughing at the strangeness of the situation, because I had known him as an anti-political guy. Dean remembered back then. We knew this guy. He's a wonderful libertarian writer, but he said, whatever you do, don't vote. Stay home. It only encourages them. Right? And he gives me another phone. I'm laughing. I said, I'm not, Mr. Brown, I'm not laughing at you. I said, I find the situation kind of unusual because you've been my mentor through your books. I'd read every single book you'd written, especially How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World, a terrific book. And Harry says, told me the story, told me Andrea, then told me about John Hicks trying to talk him out of it, then Emil Franzi tried to talk out of it, and he says, I suppose you're going to try to talk me out of it. I says, no, sir, Mr. Brown, I think you'd be a great presidential candidate. And he says, why? And I talked to him about all the books and what I'd learned from him in communicating free market, libertarian, tax-cutting ideas. And I told him that that kind of clarity, that kind of Tom Paine simplicity resonated well with real, normal Americans, not the think tank guys, not the guys on the talk shows, real, normal Americans with real jobs. People that punched in time clocks, that carried lunch buckets, that had white-collar jobs, that had families, who had kids, that he would really click. And so he and I talked for about an hour and a half about what his campaign could mean. And he says, I'm not committing to running yet, but if I were to commit, what do I need to do? And I said, well, it's odd you asked me because I prepared a list of 100 libertarians I need you to personally call. He said, 100 libertarians for me to call? I said, yeah. I said, these are all people who have been key libertarian activists in the Libertarian Party. I'd like you to call them up, introduce yourself, thank them for what they've done, and I'll go through it so you know what every single one has done. Tell them you're considering running for the nomination and ask for their guidance, advice, and suggestions. These are a lot of people that have already walked this path and have paid the dues and have laid the ground that you're looking to walk on. These are good people. Ask them this. And he says, and then what do I do? And I says, then ask them to endorse you for running for president. He said, they've never even met me. I said, trust me, Harry. They're going to like you. I get a call back from Harry Brown 7 days later. He says, Pamela and I have talked it over and we've decided to run. I gave him the list. I emailed it over to him. Harry made all of the calls. He called Ed Clark, even called Ed Crane, ex-Libertarian Party activist, and talked to every single one of these guys. And I says, and by the way, Harry, I made a huge public mistake, and Jim remembers this, some of these guys remembered it, when I outed Andre Maru for some no-nos to our LNC, and I got a lot of crap I deserved. I made a big blunder. If you have a problem with someone, I should have handled it totally privately. I screwed up. I said, you need to ask them whether I'm a deal breaker. If I am, I'm going to step away from the campaign because I would do nothing to hurt you, nothing. And I says, and remember, the last step, you're going to ask them to endorse you for the presidential nomination. He makes all the calls. He asks for the negatives from the people who didn't like me, deservedly. And out of the 100 he called, 89 of them endorsed him over the phone for the presidential nomination. They were pleased that he had changed his mind, and they were open to him being the front man for the Libertarian Party to bring the people in. He went on to get over 500,000 votes, 485,000 votes, pardon me, in 1996, and to be part of Project Archimedes with Perry Willis, Bill Winter, Steve Dosbach, and me, where we grew the party from 10,000 to 34,000 members. That all occurred because Harry Brown brought some of his investment friends who came and donated to the party, Doug Casey, brought the Berglunds back in and worked with the campaign, helped us organize, ran a real professional operation, and never did anything publicly to embarrass us. never had any untoward episodes, never had any snit fits in front of a camera. And I was really pleased with it. Well, a year after he had run the second time, he had called me up and we were talking about some work we were doing with advocates. And he says, you remember when you had me call all the 100 people and when you told me that I'd be a great candidate? And you told me how you'd lay the campaign out and who you'd hire? I said, yeah. He said, that night, I was going to quit the race. He said, you're the reason I ran. And I was stunned. And I started laughing again. And I said, Harry, the reason I had to come back in the Libertarian Party was because of you. And I was thinking of quitting too. Harry Brown had a big impact on a lot of us. And I'm grateful for the influence he made. But it was a George Bailey moment for me when I got to say to him, don't listen to those negative voices. You can make a difference. And when he said to me, you can be forgiven. You made a mistake, you blew it, you corrected it, and you're moving on. We have George Bailey moments like that. We've seen them with our different candidates. And most of them are very private. And some of them are among married couples. But I want you to know that some moments like that keep people like Tony Nathan. When Tony Nathan was the Libertarian candidate for vice president, she was on the fast track to being national news type with NBC News. She was on her way up to be an Andrea Mitchell, to be a Cokie Roberts. And she chose to run as the VP candidate with Dr. John Hospers, knowing it would cost her career, and she chose it anyway, and went on to become the first woman ever to get an electoral vote. Someone talked her into it. I don't know whether it was her husband, a wonderful man, or whether it was Dr. Hospers, or whether it was Dave Nolan. But she had a George Bailey moment too. And I want you to know these things happen. And when they happen, they can change our party. And maybe it would be you and someone you talk to, or you and someone you talk to. Or maybe one of our other candidates and someone you talk to in your speeches or on talk radio or on a blog. This George Bailey moment is real. And I was lucky because I got to be George and Clarence. And Harry was lucky because he got to be both. And I think we've all been very lucky with a terrific speech from Sharon Harris. Could you give her a hand? I've been told, actually warned by a certain state chair, not warned, threatened. I knew there was a word. Don't go back for more money. Everybody's helped plenty. And I said, but I feel so cheap and shoddy. Can't I get more? And he said, no. And so we're done with the fundraising. Would you like to say a few last words, letting everybody know? For me, thank you for making me feel welcome here. It's been a long time since I've been in Maryland, and I am glad that I met all you guys. I think you're wonderful. I think I'm going to take you all home. Get in my car.
Thank you, Congressman.
Everybody spent $1,615. Thank you very much.